Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The iconic rock band Aerosmith kicks off its fall residency in Las Vegas tomorrow at the MGM Grand. I spoke with guitarist Brad Whitford when the band rocked MGM National Harbor near DC in 2019, and I gotta say it was one of the coolest concerts I've seen.
Thank you, Jason.
Now, this tour at MGM National Harbor, it's going to be awesome. You guys are one of the biggest rock bands in history, but MGM's, relatively speaking, an intimate setting compared to a lot of, you guys could sell out stadiums. What do we got in store here? What makes this tour a little different from past ones, if any of our listeners have seen you guys before?
Well, as you know, we've been doing a residency in Las Vegas and for MGM, and we're just trying to bring a little bit of what we're doing out there in their Las Vegas casino to National Harbor. So it'll be a little, it'll be some fun things. There's a great piece of video that we show everybody that's a little bit historical and kind of showing different things about over almost 50 years of doing what we do. So you get a little bit of insight into each guy in the band, and it's really fun. People seem to really enjoy it. And then, of course, we play. That's the easy part.
Awesome. I definitely don't want to spoil the whole set list, but I assume we're gonna hear. Could you rattle off a couple we might hear? Some of the go-tos.
Oh gosh, I mean, we do a little. We mix up a few things on the set on a daily basis, or on a show basis, but. It's a little bit, we always do a little bit of stuff we did in the early days and right up to today. And sometimes we change it a little bit, just more for ourselves, I think, than the audience, but the audience always enjoys it. So we always kind of have a few surprises. Sometimes I don't know sometimes the song will be like 10 minutes before we go on, we're going to do this song. It's like, okay, I think I remember that one.
Well, I mean, you guys have, 4 or 5, I guess 5 decades of hits. Not many bands can say that, chart-topping hits over multiple decades. So you have a lot to choose from. Take me back to the very beginning. I know the band formed around, 69, 70, the original 3, and then you joined, I think, in 1971, but that was still before your first record deal. So you were in there on the ground floor of that original quintet, if you will. How exactly did that come about? Did they post, an ad for it, or did you, what was your intro to the band there? How did you actually hook up with those guys?
Well, it's kind of a fun story. I mean, I was playing in this other band. I didn't know Joe or Tom, or I didn't know anything about them. But the guys I was playing with would talk about them because they were friendly, and they would once in a while mention Aerosmith. And so we, in the summer of '71, this group I was with, we went up to Sunapee to play a show up there. And I guess the word was out that Joe Perry and Tom Hamilton came to see us play. So that's when I first met Tom and Joe. And about a week later, I got a call from Joe. And, hey, what are you doing? You want to hang out? And we did. We became friends. And shortly after that, he talked about me being in, wanting to be in Aerosmith. That's what Joe wanted to do. And so I said, hey, that's great, but I don't know anything about you. I've never seen you play, and so I can't really say, when can I come see you play? So we did that. I went to see them play up in Mendon, Massachusetts, and I was like, oh my God, these guys are great. So that was it. I signed on the dotted line in August 1971, and that's how it happened.
That's awesome. First impression of Steven Tyler when you first met him.
Oh, you know what? He I guess my first impression was he was, I got this guy is definitely a rocker, because he's always been very conscious of, you know, his clothing and his appearance. So he had a very, you know, he looked like a rock star when we were a long way from anything like that. But he had a great presence, and he just dressed badass, and quite obviously just an amazing vocal talent. So he's an incredible musician. He's got you know, perfect pitch, and he really knows how to listen to music and dissect it. He's you know, it was really cool meeting him.
Similar question about Joe Perry. You know, you guys are both there on the guitars. What's it been like riffing with him over the years, or you know or something that you know we might not know as casual listeners, but you know, just you and him on the guitars together. Just speak to your chemistry together plus strengths.
Oh well, we had a instantaneous chemistry, and it was just one of those things that worked. We didn't have to really work at it. We just sort of naturally fell into each other's type of playing, and it was easy. It was really easy. So, and he was just coming up with all these amazing riffs that, you know, eventually turned into, you know, our first album, and Get Your Wings, and I mean, he just has this ability to come up with these badass licks. And I'll tell you something, maybe people don't know, but if Joe Perry invites you over and he's going to cook, you make sure you're there, because he's a culinary master. Oh,
right. So both kind of licks.
Like if Joe's doing barbecue or Thanksgiving and he invites you, it's like, oh man, you know you're going to be very happy.
That's awesome. All right. So you mentioned, you know, he was just fiddling around, showing a bunch of riffs, you know, before, and then all of a sudden, I guess you got you're signed by Columbia. You get that self-titled debut album in '73. And of course that has Dream On there, but a lot of people today forget that wasn't like a big hit at the time, right? Didn't it take some time?
No.
Did you, I know it's been forever, but try to mentally take us back in the recording studio on that one. Did you sense that it maybe this thing bigger, like the audiences aren't getting it yet, but this thing is a masterpiece?
I don't think we felt, not at that time. It was a good song, but not at that time. It didn't feel like it was going to be such a classic that probably live for many, many, many decades. You just knew it was a good song, and the thing. It's crazy, that song. It has become that kind of tune that's just going to go on forever.
Absolutely.
Great lyrics, great song with really cool arrangement. It's very song-like. It's not just a jam. Very well constructed. I mean, we spent a lot of time constructing the guitar parts, but you know, when we did that, we recorded that. I'm surprised it sounds so good. I mean, we were actually using equipment that some of it was made out of cardboard. I mean, it was so unlike anything that we have today for recording.
That's wild.
But it survived. Yeah. It survived technology, and it survived on people's ears, and we're very proud of that one.
Awesome. And then I know, I guess by the third album really, really blew up, because I think that had Walk This Way and Sweet Emotion. Any memories you can share of, you know, from a guitarist perspective of the first time you hear that, and like, that's got to feel good on the fingers.
Well, that's just another example of Joe Perry coming up with these licks, and that was born out of that. And we had a couple of different things and a couple of different ideas, and it's like, hey, this part might work with that part. And sure enough, it did. And next thing you know, we had a sort of an afternoon off, I think it was, and Stephen came back from seeing Young Frankenstein, and he goes, I got the title for the song. We're going to call it Walk This Way.
Right, because that's what Igor tells him, right? And he's like, no, walk this way.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's awesome. Any tidbit you can provide on Sweet Emotion? Because that's been, that's one of my favorites over the years.
Yeah, that's Tom Hamilton, who came up with all of that music, and he comes up with just great stuff. And that intro, that bass intro, is very difficult to play. It sounds quite simple, it just kind of rolls along, but I've seen other people try to play it and they can't do it. Even Sting couldn't get it. So it's very cool. It's a very cool. It's so great to still hear these songs on the radio. But when you first hear it, that is like really really cool. The first time you hear the stuff on the radio, you're just like, flipping out.
Especially if it's one you wrote. Like I know you wrote Last Child and Kings and Queens. Like talk about hearing on the radio songs that you yourself, would write.
Yeah, it's just great. That is the rush of rushes when your music gets played on the radio, and it continues to happen today. When I hear it today, I still have the same. I get the same vibe. I get the same feeling.
That's awesome. It's that you still get that rush.
Yeah.
It probably never goes away. I know there was a brief breakup or change of lineup like in the late 70s. I know Joe Perry left in like 79 and you left in 81. How long were you actually gone and what sort of caused that sort of breakup and then getting the band back together? Because I know by like the early to late 80s you guys were, back together and crushing it, with Run DMC and stuff. But what happened in that little breakup period?
No, actually, what happened in that period? I mean, we had been, I would say, overworked and overstimulated with the whole drug scene stuff. We were we were a little bit shattered there, and it was just a little fight. It was silly, and but Joe kind of was like, I got to get out of here, and. It seemed like to him things were going downhill. But he left actually in 1980. I left about a year later. And basically Joe was working on the Joe Perry project, which I actually worked with him a bit on that. And I did some other studio stuff for some other musicians. And otherwise I was kind of on break. And we got back together in it was like 83, 84, right around that time period. The wounds were healed, and we said, let's just try this again. And it worked.
Well, you didn't just try, you succeeded. So many more hits since then, all the way to like decades and decades, and rock and roll and fame, and it goes on. I know you're running up against the clock, so we appreciate you taking the time. Brad Whitford, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, man, thank you very much, Jason. You had a great time.
All right.
And I hope to see you at the show.
Yeah, see you out there.
All right, cool. Thanks,
Bye.
Jason.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.